this is not a game show. I'm not gonna ask that with a yes or no. That's an important question. And I can answer it. We're not abandoning women's issues.
So do you believe the Office of Global Women's Issues should be eliminated?
One thing is to eliminate an office, another thing is to eliminate the function. And the reason why is because the challenges facing women in Africa are different than the challenges facing women in Central America.
And I have your commitment that you're going to support women around the world, because without the women being able to be successful in their country. Talk about international women's issues, because during your time as senator, you were a champion of international women's issues. You helped introduce bills that would have codified the Department's Office of Global Women's Issues and Women's Global Development Prosperity Initiative. You supported several bills, including Senator Shaheen's bipartisan Women, Peace, and Security Act. During your confirmation hearing, you committed to me that you would support women's economic empowerment abroad. And at this year's International Women of Courage Award, you waxed poetically about the administration's support for women abroad. So help me understand how to square your past with your present. You're proposing the full elimination of the Office of Global Women's Issues. You've terminated hundreds of programs that help women and girls. You provided no guidance to the department on whether they should continue to implement the Women, Peace, and Security Act, and I'm still waiting to see your support for women's economic empowerment overseas. How can you dismiss the concerns of women around the world? Do you believe that the data shows that women's economic participation includes greater economic development worldwide, and that women's participation in peace negotiations guarantees longer outcomes? And I have a few questions, so I would respectfully ask for a yes or no. Don't you think that women's participation is important and allows for better outcomes?
This is not a game show. I'm not gonna ask that with a yes or no. That's an important question. And I can answer it. We're not abandoning women's issues.
So do you believe the Office of Global Women's Issues should be eliminated?
One thing is to eliminate an office, another thing is to eliminate the function. The function will still exist. It'll be driven at the regional bureaus. So every one of our regions will have someone who's looking at and driving that issue, and right down to the embassy. It remains a priority. The same with the law that you outlined that I supported. This is going to be executed on, but it's going to be executed at the regional level and at the embassy level. And the reason why is because the challenges facing women in Africa are different than the challenges facing women in Central America.
And I have your commitment that you're going to support women around the world, because without the women being able to be successful in their countries, I believe we can't have peace, stability, and our countries move forward.
Sure, and it remains part of our agenda. It's just going to be, the service is still going to be delivered, but it's going to be delivered at the regional and embassy level, not through a standalone office in Washington, D.C.
When will we see the reports on this and how this will be delivered?
Well, this is what we're engaged in with this committee now, which is our reorganization process. We've made an initial presentation to the committees. It's not final. We've received input through the comment period, including from our own building, but also from members of Congress on both sides, and meaning House and Senate. Now we'll come back to you based on all of that input on what we propose to be the final reorganization.
Do you have a timeline when you'll come back? Because I don't want to see women left behind around the world, and I think you'd agree with me. But I'm going to turn on to Israel. If you can give us a timeline of when you're proposing to do this, that would be helpful, and we maybe come back and revisit it, Mr. Chairman. Do you have a timeline of when?
Sure, we're engaged now. I think we'll owe you a congressional notification here within the next few weeks, which is but all of that is being built on the comment period, in which we've taken input from staff and members of this committee, as well as in the House.
Thank you. Can I move on to Israel for a second? So the Office of Security Coordinator in Israel, the OSC, was established by President Bush in 2005. The OSC is widely respected, including by the IDF Central Command, for facilitating security coordination between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli security forces, which has been crucial in preventing terrorist attacks against Israelis. However, it's reported that you plan, again, to eliminate OSC, which I believe, and many others, could lead to further destabilization in the West Bank and threaten Israel's security. So, Mr. Secretary, should the U.S. continue playing a role in facilitating successful security coordination between IDF and Palestinian security forces to safeguard Israeli lives? And if so, do you believe the State Department should continue to maintain the OSC and support it financially?
Yeah, there's news reports every day about things that aren't true. So the only thing that's been discussed about OSC is whether it should be brought under the authority of the ambassador and the embassy.
You're not proposing eliminating. Thank you. We'll move further on this discussion. With my minute left, I'm going to talk about vaccines abroad, because Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, we are so proud it's prevented nearly 19 million children's deaths since it was created by providing vaccines to 50 countries. Diseases, they don't know borders. So a small investment from the U.S. can save American lives by stopping outbreaks really before they reach our shores. You were previously a champion of global vaccines, twice leading resolutions in support of continued U.S. investments in these programs. So, Mr. Secretary, again, do you consider vaccines, including for malaria, Ebola, to be life-saving? Given Gavi's proven track record of saving lives, preventing global disease outbreaks that could reach our borders, will you commit to prioritizing continued U.S. support for Gavi?
But we haven't canceled U.S. support for malaria or any of these other communicable diseases and/or vaccines. What we have, there are some individual programs that may have been canceled because they weren't being delivered in the appropriate way. All of these functions will continue. The difference now is the function will be happening under the Department of State, as opposed to a set-alone entity, which you had very little oversight over, by the way, in this committee, even though we tried in the years that I was on it with USAID. And I don't want to, I may respond to one point you made just because I'm curious. We have not abandoned Saudi normalization with Israel, as you pointed. The Saudis are the ones that have expressed their inability to move forward on it so long as the conflict is happening in Gaza. But we would love to see normalization.
The debate over these issues continued almost immediately after this May 2, 2025 hearing. On May 20th, Secretary of State Marco Rubio returned to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to defend the Trump administration's foreign policy and the State Department's sweeping reorganization. During that hearing, Democratic senators again challenged Rubio over many of the same issues raised by Senator Jacky Rosen here, including the elimination of specialized offices, reductions in foreign assistance, global health programs, and the administration's broader diplomatic strategy. Rubio defended the reorganization, arguing that the United States was not retreating from global leadership and that the changes were intended to make the department more efficient rather than abandon its core missions. Congressional scrutiny intensified just days later. On May 29th, Senate Foreign Relations Committee Ranking Member Jeanne Shaheen and House Foreign Affairs Committee Ranking Member Gregory Meeks issued a joint statement after receiving the administration's formal State Department reorganization proposal. They warned that the planned restructuring could weaken American diplomacy, reduce U.S. global leadership, and significantly alter foreign assistance programs. Both lawmakers pledged continued oversight and said Congress would closely examine the proposal before allowing major changes to move forward. Those developments explain why Senator Jacky Rosen pressed Secretary Rubio so forcefully during this hearing. Rather than focusing on a single foreign policy issue, Rosen questioned whether the administration's restructuring would fundamentally change how the United States promotes women's rights, supports global public health, and cooperates with key international partners. Rosen began by reminding Rubio that, during his years in the Senate, he had built a bipartisan record supporting international women's initiatives. She pointed to his support for legislation such as the Women, Peace, and Security Act and his previous statements promoting women's economic empowerment overseas. She then questioned why the administration was proposing to eliminate the Office of Global Women's Issues, arguing that closing the office appeared inconsistent with Rubio's long-standing record. Rubio rejected that characterization. He insisted the administration was eliminating an office, not the mission itself. According to Rubio, responsibility for advancing women's issues would move from a centralized office in Washington to regional bureaus and U.S. embassies, where policies could be tailored to the different challenges facing women in different parts of the world. He argued that women's empowerment would remain part of American diplomacy, even though the organizational structure would change. The discussion then shifted to the Office of the Security Coordinator in Israel. Rosen expressed concern over reports that the office could be eliminated, warning that it plays an important role in coordinating security between Israeli and Palestinian security forces. Rubio disputed those reports, explaining that the proposal under consideration involved placing the office under the authority of the U.S. ambassador rather than abolishing the security coordination mission altogether. Rosen concluded by questioning Rubio about Gavi, the vaccine alliance, emphasizing that global vaccination programs help prevent diseases such as malaria and Ebola from spreading internationally. She argued that continued American investment protects lives overseas, while also reducing the risk of future outbreaks reaching the United States. Rubio responded that the administration had not abandoned efforts to combat communicable diseases. Instead, he said certain individual programs had been canceled because of concerns over implementation, while the broader public health mission would continue under the State Department. It is important to distinguish between proposals discussed during this hearing and final government policy. At the time of this exchange, many of the State Department's organizational changes were still proposals subject to congressional notification, oversight, and continued review. Lawmakers questioned whether restructuring specialized offices could weaken U.S. diplomatic influence, while the administration maintained that reorganizing those functions would improve efficiency without abandoning America's international commitments. Ultimately, this hearing reflected a broader debate over how the United States should conduct its foreign policy. Senator Rosen argued that dedicated offices and specialized programs are essential to advancing women's rights, strengthening global health, and supporting international stability. Secretary Rubio argued that those same objectives could still be achieved through a leaner State Department organized around regional expertise rather than centralized offices. The hearings and congressional scrutiny that followed in May 2025 demonstrated that this debate did not end here. Instead, it became part of a much larger national discussion over the future of American diplomacy, foreign assistance, and the role of the United States on the global stage.